product vision. In most organizations, it's the key to empowerment, it's the key to focus, it's the key to great results, it's the key to enjoyment on the part of Scrum teams, and it is just such a foundation or fulcrum or leverage point to having excellent results and an excellent work environment. So I want to spend a little bit of time helping you to understand and then practice creating great product vision statements. So remember, a marketing slogan is different than a product vision. Often a product vision will refer to, the ideal customer and why they would want to use a particular product. Often a product vision and the marketing and the branding are very strongly tied to the overall corporate brand or product category brand or what have you. Even within a company and within a brand, there's different versions of a product that compete, but they compete by segmenting, by having a very specific focus in who they're for and what they're for and what the benefit is. As a product owner, your goal is to focus and motivate your Scrum team and any other stakeholders to build the right thing. And so the product vision statement is an internal statement, document, video, written, whatever, whatever form it takes. The product vision statement is an internal thing for motivating and focusing your Scrum team and other stakeholders. This is something that the product owner owns, right? Ideally, you own the product vision and you decide to evolve it or not. You decide to test it against the marketplace. You decide to take feedback from other stakeholders and maybe change it or not. That's the ideal. And so even if you're not in that ideal situation, however, understanding how to create and structure an excellent product vision statement can be very helpful, because you can take whatever you've got, improve it, and use that with your Scrum team. There might be the official product vision statement, and here's the one that we're really working with because it's better. There is something that I want to share about how to make a great product vision. And this is hard, right? So a good product vision is kind of intellectual. It provides focus and boundaries, but a great product vision motivates people. And it motivates people in two separate but very intertwined and specific ways. Okay. Number one, it motivates your team to build a great product. That should be obvious. But the second one is a little less obvious. It motivates your team to build it now, not later. So it creates a sense of urgency for your team. Okay. I'd like you to think about how would you communicate your product vision with your team in order to motivate them to build a great product and to do so with a high degree of urgency. Okay, and maybe they're already motivated that way, in which case, awesome, your product vision is probably quite strong already, even if it's not written down, by the way, right? We're not talking about necessarily a written product vision statement, but people might have, talked about a product vision and have that urgency. What I want you to do is to focus on the idea that you are communicating to your Scrum team. What does that mean? It means that you talk about the customer, not you. Okay, you is not the customer. You is the Scrum team. So if you say you or we, You mean internally to the organization. Us as a startup, you as the Scrum team in our startup. You are not writing a marketing slogan. So you're not trying to motivate your team to buy your product. Okay? You're trying to motivate them to build your product, to build it right and to build it fast. All right. Urgency is honestly the harder piece. How do you help your Scrum team understand urgency? And there's usually just a few ways. So if you're building a product that goes out into the external marketplace, one possibility is to either explicitly or implicitly talk about competition. Okay? Oh, there's a competitive threat. Our product needs to address that competitive threat. Second possibility is a window of opportunity or a natural deadline. Okay, so the idea is, hey, there's a time factor, an explicit natural time factor that we need to meet. Like we need to release our product for the Christmas shopping season no later than Black Friday. Right? Like that's going to create urgency because that's a natural deadline. Your team has no say over the deadline. And I just want to contrast that with like an artificial deadline where, you know, some executive says, we need to improve our quarterly profit. Great. That's lovely. All the power to you. We don't care. So natural deadlines are sometimes bureaucratic, like a regulatory deadline. It's sometimes related to the seasonality of work or product or whatever. It can be other things like a trade show, for example. There's lots of opportunities for natural deadlines. So if you can integrate that, again, either explicitly or implicitly. And then the third category of urgency creation that is more appropriate for internal product development, like if you're in an IT department, for example, is a burning platform. Our existing system sucks so bad that everyone hates it and is desperate to get off of it. Now, implicitly, by the way, that's also a competitive threat because the people using the existing terrible platform might choose to bring in a third-party vendor and everyone gets fired. So those are the three categories. Okay, competitive threat, a natural deadline or window of opportunity, and an internal burning platform. What often happens for product owners when they've understood their users a little bit better and they've understood their business metrics a little bit better is that it allows them to fine-tune or sometimes dramatically revise their product visions because you have a little bit deeper understanding of what's going on and the reasons for things, right? Like who are the customers, who are the users, you know, what do we need to do to succeed as a business? Remember the audience. Your Scrum team is the audience for the product vision statement. Remember that it's not a marketing slogan, usually. Remember the emotional motivation, the urgency. And finally, try and incorporate any insights, understanding stakeholders, users, and metrics. What we're going to do is we're going to practice writing product vision statements. And to do so, we're going to use some sample product ideas. An iPad app that is for plastic surgeons for their medical and practice management. Okay, so it's got a medical component, it's got a practice management component. It's an iPad app, it's not iPhone, it's not web, it's not other tablets, it's not for any other type of doctor. Our goal is to create the industry-leading application that connects plastic surgeons with patients around the world virtually at a time when in-person visits are difficult, with a focus on flexibility and instant communication. All right, so mostly this is pretty good. Like it's a fairly clear description of what you're doing. It is, let's say, okay. I see how, for example, by saying industry leading, you're sort of alluding to the competitive idea, which is important. And, you know, focus on flexibility and instant communication that guides the team to build the right things. But it could be stronger. You've stated a problem. When you say our goal is to create, basically it's a tiny wordsmithing thing, but it's passive voice, right? And it's a little bit too much in the future instead of the present. So I would rephrase this a little bit. We create the industry leading application. But so why is that important? It's really simply putting it front and center that we are doing this, and it's not just a goal, it's a reality that we're going to manifest, right? And so the team is in the process of creation. Creation is not like an instant in time. So it's still truthful. We create, okay? And by saying industry leading, that might be aspirational. It depends on what your competition is like, but it includes that competitive idea. And so you could strengthen this even further by saying the industry leading and industry recognized, for example, or you could say something like just the best. So which is stronger, right? Like is it stronger to say industry leading, or is it stronger to just say the best? Again, this is partly about how we communicate to people, right? You're a business person, and you know that if your team creates the best application, that's an important differentiator. And it will mean that you're industry leading. It'll mean you're best in class. It'll mean that there's technical excellence, right? And again, we're kind of wordsmithing here, but how do you create that impact for the team to be motivated? Does a coach of a sports team saying, we're going to be best in class, industry leading in our division, right? No, they say, we're going to be the best in our division. Our brains process it easier. Our brains process it emotionally, okay? So we create the best application, and that connects plastic surgeons with patients. Okay, so there's another little tweak here that I would suggest. And I know I'm going into a lot of detail here, but I want to leave you with an example product vision statement that's probably really awesome. Okay, and you can use this as an example when you go back to your real world. So if you think about your development team, let's just imagine that we've got a bunch of developers. How likely do you think it is that your developers are going to be frequenting plastic surgeons? Your developers make more or less money than plastic surgeons, generally speaking. There can be exceptions, right? Like high-end developers can make, you know, high six figures, right? But chances are probably not. Okay, so do your developers have any natural empathy for plastic surgeons? No, not likely. Okay, so put yourselves in the shoes of these developers. Who are they more likely to have empathy for? What about the patients, right? So when we talk about the patients of plastic surgeons, right? If it's purely cosmetic, again, do they have empathy for, you know, I don't know, like, I mean, I don't know who uses plastic surgeons. I haven't researched this in depth myself, but I know that there's a stereotype out there, right? Which is that it's, you know, actors and actresses who have lots of money and they get nose jobs and chin jobs and boob jobs and, you know, all this kind of stuff, right? And so there's a stereotype there. What about that one? Do you think that your team will have empathy for those people? Again, right? Like we have these prejudices and biases that we have to take into account when we're communicating with our team. Okay. And we will check this, right? Like we're going to take these product vision statements back to our team and see if they work. But it's important to be aware of this as you're building your product vision statement. So, okay, so the fact is that probably your team members don't know anything about any plastic surgeons, and they have some prejudices and biases about plastic surgeons, right? And they probably also have some prejudices and biases about the customers of plastic surgeons, but they probably also like some individual famous people. There's these hidden categories that we might not have emphasized or called out in our product vision statement. Now, we have to be careful here because are we building an app for cosmetic surgeons or reconstructive surgeons or, you know, whatever, right? Like, and maybe it's the same thing in terms of what you're building in your app, but maybe not. And so there's still a business decision to be made here, right? Who is actually our target customer? Who is that ideal customer? And if the target customer is really cosmetic surgeons, then you still have this kind of challenge. On the other hand, you know, or plastic surgeons who do purely cosmetic work, right? Versus plastic surgeons who do reconstructive work, et cetera, right? Those are different audiences potentially. But the idea is that you have to think it through. And then you have to reflect that in your product vision statement. Let's just make a small tweak and see how it goes. Okay, so we create the best application that connects patients with plastic surgeons. Okay, so we just reverse the order, and by reversing the order, we emphasize the user that we think might have a better chance of encouraging an empathetic response, right? And again, we're making some assumptions, which is fine, but we'll come back to that in a moment, right? Now, around the world, virtually. Okay, so around the world, I mean, if it's virtual, that potential is there, it's implicit. So there's something to be said for simplification in a product vision statement, right? Now, I don't know if this is a critical differentiator or not for your product. And again, this is a business decision, but that's potentially something that you could cut out to simplify your product vision statement and make it a little bit stronger. Or if this is a new idea and connecting plastic surgeons and patients around the world is kind of a cool new idea, then you keep it in, right? But be intentional about it. Okay, so I'm just gonna highlight that one. Virtually, at a time when in-person visits are difficult. Okay, so yeah, but if someone's going to get plastic surgery done, it's going to be in person, right? So instead of visits, say consultations, right? Because that's a good focusing differentiator, right? It's something that is a good focus, right? Like it gets your team to know this is not about the actual procedures, but the consultations still need to do some medical stuff. There's probably some business stuff and practice management stuff related to that. So that's all good. Okay. So you can't guarantee creating empathy. Okay. But you still need to find a way to state a problem in your product vision statement that your team might care about. So there's going to be obviously a natural filtering of who joins your company and works on your Scrum team based on the overall company and purpose. So you can assume, hopefully at least, that the people joining your team at least don't have moral issues or ethical issues with what you're doing. Okay, but you still need to be sensitive to how you present things in your product vision statement, because it's meant to be very powerful. We create the best application that connects patients with plastic surgeons around the world virtually at a time when in-person consultations are difficult. I'm putting a period here because honestly, like run-on sentences make people disconnect from what you're saying. And it's a little bit more punchy to say, I transform. It's an iPad app. So yeah. Okay, I transform has the best, and it's okay to say best twice. Really emphasize it. Flexibility and creates instant communication. Wow, my typing is really bad. Communication. Okay. I transform, and so again, wording is important. So we want to use the active voice. If we say with a focus, it's very passive, right? I transform has the best flexibility, creates instant communication, like be definitive and direct. Is this better than this? Here's an important question. Is it better or worse, the one that I created? How do you know if your product vision statement is good? If it motivates your team. So whenever you draft a product vision statement, draft it quickly, use the principles that I've talked about, do a little bit of wordsmithing, but don't go crazy. Bring it to the team. And when you bring it to the team, you want to show it visually for people who are visual learners. You want to read it out for those who are auditory, okay? And you want to watch carefully what their reactions are. Do you get people kind of leaning back going, or do you get people kind of going, oh, right? Or do you get people like proactively putting a thumbs up? Do you get people saying, wow, I love that? Or, oh, that's really interesting. Or do you get people saying, I don't know about that. Like, aren't we doing blah, 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 right? Like, so you want to watch those reactions very carefully. Now, it's not going to be universal. Not every team member is going to respond in the same way. But you want to get that gestalt instant reaction. And if the reaction is not a good, engaged, fairly strong reaction, go back to the drawing board immediately. Say to the team, look, hey, this was my first attempt or my 10th attempt, doesn't matter. It clearly didn't work for you guys. I'm going to revise it, right? And so I want you to know that what I wrote here might be better, but the only way you would know is by actually checking with the team. Now, your other stakeholders might also respond negatively or positively, but they don't matter nearly as much, right? Your team matters because they're the ones who are actually going to build the darn thing. They've got the skin in the game. They've got the responsibility to actually make your product a success from a technical solution perspective. Okay? And they need to believe in it. A dog dating website. Okay? It's for dogs to date, not for humans. It's not for cats or any other type of pet. It's a website. It's not an app. It's old school. Okay? And humans use it, not dogs. There's no dog user interface. Creating a happy place for dogs to become social and meet their energy needs while relieving owners of the stress of day-to-day dog ownership tasks. Okay, so one thing that I notice immediately, which is really good, is that there's a couple of emotion words in here. Okay, now in the plastic surgeon one, it's maybe harder to put in, but you might go back again and consider, is there a way to put emotion words in? When we use emotion words in our product vision statement, we often trigger those very same emotions in our team, at least at a subconscious small level. Creating. Who is creating? We create a happy place for, okay, now, again, you can possibly make some assumptions about your team members, but you just want to be careful about who you emphasize first in your product vision statement. Do we care more about the dog owners, or do we care more about the dogs? And by the way, I'm a dog owner. Okay, so I can speak personally about this, but you might consider changing the order and talk about the owners first and then the dogs. But let's leave it the way it is, right? This is just a note. Happy place for dogs to become social, to socialize, and meet their energy needs. Okay, so I'm going to put a period there. Of course, you're building a website. So the website isn't where the dogs meet and, socialize. So I just want to caution you that there might be some pedantic individuals on your team who would look at that and go, that's not what we're doing. We're creating a website, right? And so I like this personally. I think this statement is strong, but just a cautionary note, you may get someone going, yeah, are we in the business of creating dog parks? I didn't know that, right? So just FYI, right? So we create actually a website to enable, right? And I'm just going to put that in there in case, right? So a website to enable. Again, I'm dividing it into 2 sentences because it just gets a little weak if you have a long sentence, right? You want things to be a bit punchy. Okay, well, relieving owners of the stress of day-to-day dog ownership tasks. So how can we phrase this to be a bit stronger? Okay, so again, someone pedantic could say, well, we're not actually doing that. So how could we rephrase this to be really strong, but also address that kind of pedantic side of people, right? Like, so this website puppylove.com helps owners relieve stress of day-to-day dog ownership tasks. I mean, so in a product vision statement, I did this in the last one, but I didn't call it out directly. It's often good to somehow use the name of your product in your product vision statement. Okay. And again, it just creates a little bit more of a connection to the identity of what people are doing. This was already pretty good because it had the emotion piece, but it's missing the urgency piece. Why do we want to build this now? Creating urgency is tough. There's probably a lot of websites and apps already for connecting dogs or other pets, you know, in a social way. All right. So if that's true, then, and you're a new startup, then creating urgency is often related to doing something that no one else is doing yet. And you realize that there's all these competitors in the same general marketplace, and we have to be first to market with our unique differentiator. And again, we have to be fairly hard on ourselves when we try and create this, and not just any differentiator, but ideally a unique, compelling differentiator. And this is, by the way, something where you as a product owner might be sort of pushing the limits of your expertise and authority. And you might need to go, for example, to your marketing department or to, you know, like some R&D department in your organization, and actually ask, hey, why is what we're doing really different? But let's make something up. I went to the market this past weekend and I saw something that's kind of unusual. Okay. I saw a 3-legged dog. Okay. Now, I don't know if dogs have prejudices or anything like that, but sometimes the differentiator is focus. And I'm deliberately using something here that is kind of ridiculous. When you narrow down who or how you're serving to something very, very unique, that's a differentiator. And again, the wording is a little bit awkward here, so I have to think about it a bit. We are the first to create a happy place for 3-legged dogs to socialize and meet their energy needs. Some of the most successful products ever started with extremely narrow target markets. Facebook, for example, right? It was just one school for students at that school in its first version. I think it was Harvard, but I don't remember exactly, right? And then it expanded to 2 and 3 schools before it became open at all. And it was purely word of mouth, and it was purely a university, college level socializing, connecting platform, right? That's all it was. And it was extremely narrow. So your product vision can be narrow at first if you want, and it can evolve. Okay. You serve one particular need really well. It's sometimes referred to as a dot, right? Like you serve this tiny speck of the overall market really well, and it allows you to expand because of how incredibly successful you are in that tiny speck. But I wanted to use this as an example of how sometimes focus and differentiation is the way to create urgency, right? So your team looks at that and goes, I wonder if anyone else is planning to serve three-legged dogs. We want to be first. Okay, there's no one out there yet, but maybe someone else is working on it. We better get this out there quick. Right? Like that's the kind of mental process that goes on when you have something new and unique that you think you're doing and you can't find it anywhere else. So this is a little bit of thinking like a business person. It's kind of helpful to have some understanding of why focusing on a narrower market actually often leads to greater success. And it's because you can serve that market so well that the goodness spreads and it gives you opportunities to expand instead of starting helping everyone. Again, it's not necessarily perfect. You would absolutely want to test this with your team, get their visceral, quick responses, and possibly update it further, revert it, whatever. But I hope that in-depth analysis for both of those was useful for thinking about how you incorporate urgency, how you motivate people emotionally, how you write a focused product vision statement. Now, by the way, there are templates for writing product vision statements, but honestly, the templates actually make it harder to write a great product vision statement. They make it easy to write a good product vision statement, but they make it harder to write a great product vision statement because a great product vision statement doesn't follow a template. Okay? It triggers a sense of urgency and a sense of strong motivation in your Scrum team. As part of the Product Owner Bootcamp, you have access to a 1-hour team performance coaching session, which could include an in-depth review of your product vision statement. So that's one possibility, by the way, if you're thinking about how to apply this in practice in real life.